Lesson 9.6, Solving Quadratic Equations by Using the Quadratic Formula. So this is a huge day. This is a huge lesson. We get to learn this formula, the quadratic formula, which is arguably one of the most important formulas we learn all year in algebra. If you want to do yourself a favor, Google or on YouTube, type in quadratic formula song, and you'll see some pretty sweet videos that'll help you remember this, but honestly, you don't really need to because it's on your formula card. Yay. All right, here we go. Before we start using this thing, we absolutely, positively have to understand that they are getting their equations from the standard form of a quadratic. So let's write that here really quickly. So standard form of a quadratic, let's remember, is ax squared plus bx plus c. And we're going to be using these numbers a, b, and c in our formula, right? The a, we see it in two places. We see it multiplying with the 4 and the c, and we see it on the bottom. All right, we also see b. We see it opposite of b here, and also b squared under the square root. And then finally, we have c, which we are only using once right there. Those are the only numbers that we have to plug in, and that's where we plug them in. So let's take a quick look at number 1. Let's identify that 4 is a, b is 4 again, and c is 1. And it should be equal to 0. If it's not, get it equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my quadratic formula here. I'm going to write x equals, and I'm going to leave a space for all these highlighted letters here. So I'm going to say negative b, right, parentheses, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. So I know this looks super cool, but I'm just leaving spaces for me to fill in those numbers. All over 2 times a. So let's color code this again. I think it helps if I can do it right and do it quickly. All right, so a is 4. And a goes in this spot and it also goes in this spot. Okay, so again, I'm just looking at my formula to figure that out. So if a is 4, I'm putting it here and I'm putting it here. The next one that we're going to do is b, and it looks like I have 4 for b again. B goes in this spot, and it also goes in this spot. All right, so positive 4 will go here and here. And then finally, we have C, which, like we said, we only have to use it once. It's just the number 1, and that goes in this spot here, and that is a 1. Okay, so if you can correctly fill all these numbers in, that's half the battle. So let's take a quick look at what we get when we clean them up. So we get x equals, first thing, I kind of do this in 3 parts. The first thing I look at is just this outside thing. So negative parentheses 4 parentheses, y'all, that's just negative 4. Then we have plus or minus. We talked about that yesterday. Remember, that means positive or negative. And then let's clean up what's under the square root. Okay? Or you know what? We can just type the whole thing in our calculator. Well, no, let's just do that. So I'm going to type this right here in my calculator. I want to know what number is under the square root. So I'm going to type in, just like I see it, 4 parentheses squared minus 4, that was part of the formula, and then another 4, and then the number 1. And all this right here is what I see under the parentheses. All right, so let's press enter, and I get 0. All right, so 0. And then all over 2 times 4, which is 8. Well, let's think about here. If we're writing 0, we don't really need to write 0, so this becomes x equals negative 4 over 8. We don't have to worry about any of this, right? Plus or minus 0, that doesn't make sense. And so my final answer here is just x equals negative 4 over 8, which is negative 1/2. All right, just negative 1/2. Before we go any further, y'all, I got to show you something. If I look at my calculator, see how I already typed in the 4x squared plus 4x plus 1? I already typed this in there. Let's look at my graph. This is negative 1/2 x. Isn't that what we found, negative 1/2? That's my 0, negative 1/2. So this formula will find your answer for you. Now, it's honestly, I don't think it's super helpful if our graph could answer it for us, but it's going to be very helpful tomorrow when they get a little bit crazier. So let's just get used to plugging in these nice numbers, getting nice answers today, so that when we get ugly answers tomorrow, we'll at least have some experience with the formula. All right, here we go. So let's remember I'm using this formula here. And I'm going to rewrite it out with these. So let's quickly write out in this equation, a is 1, right, 1x squared. B is 0. We don't have any b values in the middle here. Okay. Sorry, that was strange. Okay, b is 0. And then we got c, and that's my constant, which is negative 25. All right, so if you don't have a number with x, that means you don't have b. That's why we used 0. Here we go. So x equals negative b. And so even though it's 0, I'm still going to use it because otherwise it'll be confusing. So negative b, right? So 0 in there. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Okay, so we got another 0 squared here. And then we've got minus 4 times a. And a in this case is 1. All right, so we got a 1 here. And then c, right? 4ac. And then c is what? Negative 25. All right, so that goes there. Okay, all in the square root. And then all of this is over 2 times a. And a is 1. Just put another little 1 right, oops. Put another 1 right there. And now we just got to clean it up. Okay, so half the battle is just filling those things in. So here we go. We got x equals, well, what's negative 0? Well, that's stupid. It's just 0, right? Makes no sense. So we're just going to say 0, which honestly you don't even have to write. But I want you to write it because I don't want you to forget to put the plus or minus. And then let's see what we have in here. So we have 0 squared, which again is probably silly to even write it, minus 4 times a, which is 1, and c, which is negative 25. Don't forget the negative. And we get 100. So 100. All right, all over 2 times a, which is just 2. Okay, so in the process of cleaning this up, I hope we know that plus or minus the square root of 100. The square root of 100, y'all, I mean, you should know it, but if you don't, you can use your calculator. The square root of 100 is just 10. So we have plus or minus 10 over 2. So what are my answers here? I want you to think about this. Well, I guess we can keep cleaning this up. We got x equals positive or negative. 10 divided by 2 is just 5. So x equals plus or minus 5. And I want you to think about this graphically. So I'm going to take this x squared minus 25 and I'm going to put it in y equals because I want you to see this graph, all right? X squared minus 25, and let's look at my graph. Do you see how my zeros are at negative 5 and positive 5? Well, yeah, because that's my answer, positive or negative 5, right? Plus or minus 5. If you don't have this symbol here, you're wrong because you only have one of the answers, all right? Plus or minus 5. Okay, and again, you guys, I know that it's so much easier to just use your calculator for this problem, but when we do crazy problems tomorrow, you're going to be glad you got this practice of writing them out with the easy problems today. Okay, problem number 3. Here we go. Problem number 3, first thing I hope you identify is this is a no-no. All right, this is a no-no. It needs to be equal to 0. All right, so we're going to say needs to equal 0. So let's go ahead and do what we got to do here. I'm going to add 4 to both sides, but I cannot add it to 5x squared, and I cannot add it here, so it just kind of goes on the end. Here's what that looks like. 5x squared plus 3x, and then just a plus 4 on the end, because you couldn't combine it with anything. And now this is equal to 0. Okay, perfect. So we have A is 5, B is 3, and C is 4. So let's write our equation here. We have x equals negative b, all right, and b in this case is 3. We actually have a number for that. That's nice. So 3 plus or minus the square root of b squared, all right, so 3 squared, minus 4 times a, which in this case is 5, all right, and then c. 4 times a, c, and our c value in this case is 4. So we got a 4 in there. All right, all this is under the square root, and then everything is over 2 times a, and a is 5. Okay, so we got everything plugged in. Now we just need to clean it up. Let's see. negative negative parentheses 3, right? That just becomes negative 3. Plus or minus the square root of, let's see what we get for that. Let's see, second quit. We got 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 5, and c, which is 4. Oops. And we get negative 71. So negative 71. Okay, we're a little bit weirded out by that. That's not a number that we like, but let's hang on a second. Let's just kind of finish this. 2 times 5 is 10 on the bottom here. All right, y'all. This is just really, you know what, let's do? What is the square root of negative 71? Let's try that. Square root of negative 71. We get an error. Non-real answers. Okay, that's right. We cannot have, let's write this, cannot have a negative number in a square root. Did you guys remember that? We cannot have a negative in a square root. So let's take 1 second. I want you guys to look at this graph because I hope this will make it make sense. Take a look what's happening in our graph here for this one. So I'm going to type in the original, well, I guess when it was equal to 0. So 5x squared, decline. Can I even click that right now? Sorry about that, guys. All right, let's clear this out. We got 5x squared plus 3x plus 4. Let's look at this graph. Oh, that's why this isn't working. Think about it. How many zeros exist for this quadratic? None. There are no solutions. There are literally no points on the x-axis, so there are no solutions. So we're going to say here, no solutions. And your clue, right, the reason you should have known this was because you had a negative number under the square root, right? Your calculator gave you an error, which made you pause and realize, oh yeah, that's because it doesn't even touch the x-axis. There are no solutions. So these notes, you guys, we did a problem that had no solutions. We did a problem that had 2 solutions, right, plus minus, and we had a problem that had 1 solution. Keep in mind that those are the only 3 possible outcomes. Your quadratic will have no solutions, 1 solution, or 2 solutions. Those are the only options. All right, today your numbers are going to be nice and beautiful. Tomorrow they're going to get crazy. So please, 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 please don't just use your calculator, even though it's easy. Do it by hand. Get used to the formula while the numbers are still nice. All right? Good luck. Don't forget you have an edge elastic practice after this.